Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to head over to America once again, and this is a brewery that I've reviewed a number of collaboration beers from, but I've never ever been able to do a dedicated beer review to them, so I'm really quite curious to see how this one turns out. And this is one of the best known American craft breweries today actually, and a big thank you to Chris Contreras, one of my followers, who sent me this beer. He's an American dude living in Belgium, and he sent me a second box that contained 2 American beers and 3 or 4 Belgians, so very much looking forward to reviewing those for you on the channel over the next little while. A huge thank you once again to Chris for making this review possible. He brought this beer back to Europe with him from the States, from what he told me. So for this one, for the first time, we are going to go to Dogfish Head Brewery, who, as I've told you many a time, are from Delaware, and this beer I think should be an absolute monster. This one is called the Burton Baton, and it comes in at 10% ABV. Now this one's described as an oak-aged Imperial IPA, oak-aged double IPA, however you want to say it, but from what I was reading, it's supposed to be a kind of hybrid between like an English old ale and the Imperial IPA, so I really think this one will be very interesting. It's not too often actually that you come across these barrel-aged IPAs. I've had 1 or 2 of them before. The first one I ever had was actually from Japan, which was really nice. It was one of the it was one of these ones that was it was called the Far East, if I remember right, from Shiga Kogen beer, and I'm guessing maybe Dogfish Head is where they found their inspiration for this one, because these guys do have quite a large barrel aging operation from what I understand. But yeah, my very first dedicated review to Dogfish Head. This beer has a rating of 96 overall, and within the style on Rate Beer it was rated excellent on Beer Advocate as well, and it was also well into the 4 stars when I checked out on Untappd too. I did rake through those actually to have a little look and see if I could figure out what this one was named after, but I'm guessing with the artwork on it, it is some sort of brewing apparatus. I was trained in chemistry and physics, of course, but I wasn't no expert when it comes to actually the names of brewing vessels and stuff like this. But very much looking forward to this beer, and as always I hope you guys enjoy my take on it, and a huge thank you again to Chris for making this review possible. So anyway, as is usual with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done involving Dogfish Head Brewery. Very first time I'm doing a dedicated review to them, as I mentioned, hopefully more to come in the future. There's all the usual social media. If you want to see more beer reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel of course has a geography based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the American beers that I've reviewed for you. That's constantly being added to, and as always please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review, especially if you're watching in Delaware, because you know Dogfish Head is pretty much the only brewery we're going to hear about from Delaware over here in Europe. But as always, your contact to the channel and your support is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Dogfish Head then, on to my brewery notes. So as I mentioned to you earlier, Dogfish Head are from Delaware, and they were founded back in 1995 by Sam Caglione when he opened the Dogfish Head's Brewing and Eats basically in Rehoboth Beach in Delaware. So he'd started brewing in his dorm room at university in Pennsylvania with 2 friends, and from then on he was really just hooked on the idea of turning to be a professional brewer. But originally they brewed on a very, very small system, which was essentially 3 kegs with propane burners underneath, and this gave them an output of about 12 barrels, and this meant that they could experiment hugely with their recipes, and they also became very well known for their food that they cooked in a wood burning grill as well, and the reputation of this place really just spiralled out of control. They very quickly found themselves being unable to meet the demand for their beer, so at first they increased their capacity 30-fold before they eventually moved to a new brewing facility in Milton in Delaware, which was in a 100,000 square foot converted cannery. At the same time, they built a distillery to make rum, gin and vodka on the 2nd floor of their Rehoboth Beach brew pub, so they really started experimenting very small with their spirits. But today they actually have 3 brew houses. This is the one in Rehoboth, one in Lewes and one in Milton, all in Delaware of course, and they produce around 175,000 US barrels of beer per year. And they also have another distillery now which operates around 50 stills, and that is only in one distillery. So they're distilling whiskey, gin, I think, and rum as well. They're doing a lot of different spirits there. But now they operate their original Brewery and Eats restaurant. They've also got the newer Chesapeake and Maine restaurants. Both of those are in Rehoboth in Delaware, and they've also got 3 ale houses in Fairfax and Falls Church in Virginia, and also another one in Gaithersburg, Maryland. And they do have the Dogfish Head Inn as well. So these guys are, you know, they're expanding a lot. They're brewing a hell of a lot in terms of their capacity these days. The company has grown to be really pretty exponential, but from what I understand, they are still being run kind of with the same manner, if you like, that they always have been. So yeah, one of the better known US craft breweries these days. They apparently distribute to about 38 different states in the US, but strangely enough, we don't get too many of these over here in Europe. It still is actually quite difficult to get Dogfish Head beers when you consider the size of them compared to like New Belgium and some of the other bigger US craft breweries. So yeah, hopefully we start to get more of these beers over here in the near future. But anyway, just to tell you a few of the specs of the beer before we open this one up then. This one is a 10% barrel-aged double IPA. It was originally released back in 2004. It's hopped with Warrior and Glacier hops with a malt base of Pilsner and Amber malts and fermented with a mixture of English and American yeasts, and it's aged over French oak before being dry hopped once again with Glacier. Just to tell you a little bit about the Warrior hop, because I have seen this one used a couple of times, but I haven't tried too many beers that use it. It seems to be more popular in America than Europe. This is one that was developed a good number of years ago by the Select Botanicals group, and it's supposed to give a very distinctive spicy and floral quality, whereas the Glacier hop is one that was developed at Washington State University and first released in 2000, and it's supposed to give a nice herbal, woody and kind of citrusy aroma and flavour as well. So I guess the woody notes in this will kind of blend in quite nicely with the barrel aging qualities of the beer too. But yeah, that's all you need to know about the beer. I'll just let you have a little artwork, a look at the artwork before we open this one up. Very kind of typical Dogfish Head artwork from what I understand when I was having a little look around the website of this one. I'd really like to try their 60, 90 and 120 minute IPAs. I think they would be absolutely lovely to try, so hopefully that's a beer I can get a hold of in the future. There you can see the Dogfish Head bottle cap on this one, and it tells you a little bit about the side of the beer here as well. A wood-aged marriage of an Imperial IPA and an English style ale. This hot monster is tamed by time spent in oak tanks. 10% ABV, 12 fluid ounces, which if I'm remembering the silly American measurements properly, is 355 millilitres. So yeah, I always like to call the American measurement system and temperature system a bit silly. It's not based on nature as the metric system is, so to me it's a bit silly because of my chemistry and physics background. But yeah, lovely looking beer this one, and again a huge thank you to Chris Contreras for making this review possible. There you can see on the glass the Dogfish on the top of this, or on the glasswork, sorry. So without further ado then, let's get this guy out and we'll get on with the tasting. Very curious to see how this turns out. Nice little bit of smoke on the opening, and we'll get it out and into the glass. And I'll tell you, when you open this beer up, you really can smell some of these lovely oaky vanilla notes, but it also does have a good little bit of spicy hop quality to it as well, which I'm guessing will be from that Glacier hop that they've put in here. So yeah, this one looks very, very nice. Looks pretty much like a West Coast IPA, to be honest with you. It is one of the darker looking West Coast type IPAs that I've seen, if you like. Nowhere near as hazy as the kind of Haze for Days New England was, but when it's brewed back in 2004, you would certainly not expect that. But yeah, lovely looking beer this. You can see there's a finger of a frothy, I would say kind of cream, very slightly fawn coloured head on this one. One or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, a few little ones heading up towards the bottom of the head. If I had to describe the colour, I would say this one is a nice kind of deep blood orange, and there's one or two little bits of sediment just kind of floating around in this one too. So let's just take a closer look at the aroma of this beer and see how we get on. If you consider it as a double IPA, then the appearance isn't too you know, it really isn't too surprising, if you like. You know, very dark, more blood orange coloured IPA, which is certainly possible for the more West Coast type IPAs. So yeah, let's have a look at the aroma of this one then and just see how we get on. Oh, now that smells really nice. You can smell the hops in this one, like when you smell a beer where the hops have dropped, if you like. This beer does have a little bit of that. It has that very kind of earthy, herbal kind of quality to it, which is quite nice. And like I was saying, the hops that they've used in this one really kind of give it that. The Glacier hop really gives it that kind of nice woody herbal quality. And you can really smell that coming out. Actually, when you sugar the beer up a little bit more, you do get a little touch more earthiness out of it, but at the same time you do get a good bit of a floral kind of grassy aromaticity out of this one. It doesn't say on the bottle actually when it was bottled right enough, but I'm pretty sure that it will be pretty fresh. Chris will have picked up a nice fresh one from it. It doesn't say on the bottle cap, but you can smell. It's interesting that, and I found the same with the other barrel aged double IPAs that I've had. They do, they usually do turn it very nicely, but it does have that kind of aroma to it where it smells like the hops have dropped a little bit. So you get this almost kind of earthy, herbally, almost slightly oniony type aroma out of them, and you can pick up that in this beer a little bit. But yeah, it comes across really nicely in its aroma. That actually works well with these woody notes. But yeah, nice little bit of a floral kind of grassy aromatic note to this one. You can definitely pick up a little touch of the citrus too. When you open this beer up, it almost had a little bit of a slightly figgy, blackcurranty type aroma to it, but that seems to have disappeared now. Now it's more along the lines of a kind of grassy citrus, if that makes sense. But yeah, the malty qualities in this are very nice as well. You can smell that nice smooth white bready malt base. The oaky notes are coming out of it a lot, are coming out of it really nicely too. You can smell a little touch of that vanilla sweetness in there also, which is nice. It does have a little bit of an almost spicy oak quality to it as well, which is interesting. Definitely a little bit of brown sugar in there. It's almost rich and caramelly, but at the same time it has a little bit of a kind of biscuity caramel wafer, and again that blends really nicely with the sort of oaky, woody base. But there is definitely a little touch of spice in there, which is interesting. But yeah, I really like how everything in this one is going together, especially when you sugar this beer up a little bit. You really start to get more of the earthy kind of herbal qualities out of this one, which is very, very nice. So as I always say, take a little bit of time and just enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck in. This one, to me, it's interesting because you get these lovely big woody notes to it. It has quite a bit of fresh hop quality to it, but it also smells a little bit like the hops have dropped. It almost smells a little bit like an IPA that's kind of gone off a little bit, which is kind of interesting. But I'm pretty sure Chris told me this bottle was quite fresh. So yeah, just take a little bit of time and enjoy the aroma of it because it is pretty unusual. From that regard. But yeah, nice biscuity notes, nice kind of caramelly sweetness, and a lovely woodiness to the malt base, and some interesting kind of herbal, grassy, floral kind of notes to the and woody. There is almost a woody element to the hops as well, which is kind of interesting. It all goes together very, very nicely, and this is half the experience when it comes to craft beers and stuff like that. So take a bit of time and enjoy the aroma before you have the taste of this one then. So this one is the Burton Baton, a 10% Imperial IPA, supposed to be a little bit of a hybrid with an English old ale, as I mentioned, from Dogfish Head over in Delaware in America. Thank you again to Chris for sending this beer, and you will see a few more of his beers being reviewed over the next little while. Let's get stuck in. Slange, skål. Oh yeah, that is a really pretty nice beer, I have to say. The hoppiness really is still coming out quite nicely. You do get a little bit of bitterness off this one on the edge of the tongue. You can feel that it's a nice big boozy beer, this though. And one thing I've always said about these the IPAs recently is that I've been missing the West Coast IPAs, and especially the big American ones that have these big sweet malt bases to them. This beer's a little bit of a nostalgia trip for me, to be honest. You're going back to 2004, of course, but this beer is just very, very nice. I like what they've done with this. Yeah. So, where to start with this one then? Let's go for the malt base. You can feel the woody qualities of this one, just the nice oaky smoothness. That just blankets the middle of your palate in this beer. That really forms the linchpin. The woody flavours, I think, as you come a bit further forward, they do dry out slightly. Then if you go to this very centre of your palate and come forward a little bit, that's where you start to get this slight vanilla sweetness out of this one. There is a little touch, if you move out to the side of your palate a little bit from there. That's when you start to get a little touch of a kind of spicy or slightly dry quality to the oaky flavours in this one. This is a beer that definitely dries out in the middle of the palate and starts to become a little bit more spicy and bitter, if you like. I think there's definitely, it is definitely fair to say that. The big boozy caramelly notes are sitting right in the centre of your palate. It's a nice big syrupy brown sugar note to this one. It's more of a caramel than a molasses or a treacle, or however you want to describe it. Actually, it's more of a sweet but quite dense caramel flavour. Actually, it does have a little bit of a toasted edge to it, and you can feel the alcohol warmth in there. That the brown sugars in this one really are covering the alcohol warmth, and you do get a little bit of warmth just down here in your chest as well. But yeah, it's got a really nice sweetness to it. The sugars in this one, the brown sugars, almost come across as being a little bit kind of candied. This beer it almost has a little bit of a sort of cowpaw vibe to it, a sort of cough syrupy. Maybe not cough syrup. It's almost a little bit like kids' medicine, actually. Kids' cold medicine. It tastes like. It reminds me of the cowpaw that my mum used to feed me when I couldn't sleep at home, and things like that when I was a youngster. It really reminds me, the brown sugary notes in this one really remind me of that. The brown sugars just have a nice kind of candied edge to them, but the woody notes in this beer are very, very nice. For a beer that obviously they've put a lot of effort into, it's one of the things that's a little bit surprising about this is that it isn't a little bit more complex, but that's not a bad thing. This beer, it's very kind of straight up in what it aims to do, but it does it really well. The flavours all blend together really nicely in this one, and it's one of these beers I think that highlights simplicity. It's good. If it's done well enough, simplicity is good. This beer, I mean, you can get when you get some of these Imperial stouts and stuff like that, you'll get a hell of a lot of things going on in the palate, and it can, there can be so many complexities to it. This beer, I find it personally very kind of straight up, if you like. It's for something that you would think, when you pick up this beer, you think, this one is going to be a bit of a monster and have a hell of a lot going on. But it's actually very straightforward, but it does what it aims to do really pretty damn well. I like what they say with this one, and I can see why they say that it's got a bit of that IPA quality to it. And if it is an IPA, it really leans more towards the kind of old school English style IPA. That said, and it's one thing I've always said about the traditional English beers in comparison with the new American takes, and the same for the Scotch ales as well. Whenever the Americans get a hold of an old world beer style, they always make it a little bit more sugary and sweet, and you can definitely pick that up in the brown sugar element of this beer. It's a lovely sweet caramel that they've got in this one. It's almost got a little bit of a kind of rock candy sugar to it as well, which is quite interesting. If you had the old English ones, they'd be a lot more toasty and kind of well fired in the brown sugar qualities. This is definitely a bit sweeter, so if I was blind tasting this beer, to me, if someone asked me what country this was from, I'd be like, that's an American beer. Because I think the Americans do have a little bit of a sweet tooth in my experience, but the way the brown sugars come out in this one is very nice, and but overall, the vibe of the beer, it's definitely not as sweet as some of the American style IPAs. For me, this one's definitely an English style IPA, and it does have that bigger brown sugary presence that you would expect of the Old Ale. The Old Ale, of course, is a style that's there's about 4 or 5 different versions of it, but when you try them, they're all pretty thing. I think the most recent American Old Ale that I tried was Old Curmudgeon's Better Half, if I'm remembering correctly. And there's so many different varieties of it. That was from Founders Brewing Company, but this one definitely does have that kind of Old Ale vibe to it, which is very, very nice. Definitely an American take on pardon me, an English style beer, this one. If we have to talk about the IPA spectrum too, it's kind of got a few West Coasty elements to it because of the malt base and the sweetness, but it really leans towards the English side of things there because of the darkness, some of the darkness that you get in the brown sugar as well. It is a good bit sweeter than you get from an English brewed version of this beer, but it works very, very nicely. So thumbs up to Dogfish Head with this one. They could have fallen into the trap of making it a bit too complex, but it works out pretty damn nicely the way it is. And when you taste this beer, you really do get the sense of you get the sense that this is a beer that wants to be straightforward and have that drinkability to it, but it wants to have, for someone that wants something a bit bigger and more complex, it does have that as well. It's got the big bold flavours to it, which is nice. So yeah, malt base of this, really nice, but it's still kind of straightforward, doesn't go to be too complex. Hoppy side of the palate then. Back corners of the palate, you've got a nice little bit of earthiness there. It's got a nice little bit of darkness to the earthiness, I would say, as well, just to give the beer that bit of bitter edge. But as you come further forward, you can see it evolves to be a little bit more herbal, and that herbal quality just continues and lightens up as you get towards the front corners of your palate. There's a little touch of a floral aromatic note in there, which I'm guessing will be more along the lines of the Warrior. I remember that being quite a spicy floral aromatic hop. Then round the front curve of the tongue, it's a little bit lighter and more grassy, and behind the front curve of the palate, there's that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters start to push their way out of the beer. And like I said, this one, it does have a good bit of sweetness. It has that kind of cough syrupy edge to it, so maybe there is a little touch of phenol in this beer, which is kind of interesting, but it's not phenolic in the way that some of the Belgian Dubels and stuff like this can be. So yeah, it's got a sort of, on the fruity side of things, it evolves later on to be a little bit more of a kind of like a sort of figgy, slightly, I don't know, it's not quite blackberry, it's more of a figgy kind of candied red fruit flavour that you get out of this one. It's got a little bit of that kind of flavour, the candied strawberry that you get from the little heart-shaped sweets in the Haribo Star Mix. It has a little bit of that to it, but it's also got a sort of sultana-y, slightly datey quality to it, this beer. It's almost like a kind of cakey fruitiness, like an alcoholic fruit cake or something like that. Maybe there's a little touch of a slightly apricot-y flavour coming out of this beer as well, and maybe a little touch of a peary note, pears, a little bit of kind of sultana's datey sort of flavour. It has a sort of cakey edge to it, this beer. So there is a little bit of complexity to the fruits in this one, but the malt base for me and the hoppy side of the beer are fairly straightforward, and those flavours just blend together really quite nicely actually. So I think in fairness, now that I reflect on the fruit a little bit, it does have a little edge of complexity to it in the fruity side of things, because there is a good little bit going on in there. But this beer is one that you'd expect to be more focused on the malt base, and it pulls it off very nicely. It doesn't go and be too complex, like I said. So for me, in terms of this beer's rating that it has on the peer review sites, I would pretty much agree with this. This is a really solid beer, and if they can do malt bases like this, I'd love to try, the 60, 90 and 120 minute IPAs. I think those would be pretty damn cool to try actually. So hopefully those are some of the beers I can get a hold of in the fairly near future. But yeah, in terms of the mouthfeel of this one then, I would say definitely a full-bodied beer. Carbonation's very smooth. It's a big, oily beast of a beer, this. There's no doubt in my mind about that. So yeah, hoppy side of things then, I think you're looking around 35-ish, maybe 40 IBUs from this beer. Yeah, I think about 40 to be honest with you. I don't think there's not too much in the way of IBU with this beer. It's not going to blow your head off in terms of bitterness or anything like that. Lovely bit of sweetness from the malt base. As I said, the malt base kind of the middle of your palate dries out a little bit with this one, so it does become drier the further into the flavour you get with this beer. And the way the caramelly sugars come out is also very nice. It leans towards the sweeter side of things, but towards the back of the palate it's a little bit darker and more toasty. And you also get some more biscuity notes and graininess to this beer the further out from the centre of the palate you go. And it just, as I say, the palate has that woody smoothness underneath and some of the vanilla kind of sweetness as well. It's really well blended, the malt base. The hops are nice. It's a really good transition from a slightly darker earthy flavour towards the nice lighter and fresher grassy notes, and also you've got that nice sort of juicy fruity quality to this one. The fruits are a little bit more oily in the beginning, but then they become a slight touch more juicy, I think, the further into the aftertaste you go. The things that linger in the aftertaste of this one for me, it's a little bit of the earthiness of the hops, some of the herbal and floral qualities. There is a little touch of spiciness to this beer from the Warrior hop, I'm guessing, as well, but the juicy fruity notes are just sitting there as well. But there is enough in this beer to kind of keep you going on. But I think what they've mastered with this one is not making it too complex and just making all these flavours fit together really nicely. So it gets a big thumbs up from me, this one, and this one makes me even more curious about those, you know, 60, 70, 60, 90 and 120 minute IPAs. Those are ones that I'd really like to try actually. So yeah, let's leave it at that one, at that for this one then. This one is the Burton Baton, a 10% Imperial IPA, sort of a crossbreed actually between the English Old Ale. Some of the brown sugary qualities give it that, as we talked about that earlier on. But it's a very nice beer, this, and it's one that you definitely need to try for yourself if you get the chance. And this was a cool one actually to review as my first beer from Dogfish Head. So again, a huge thank you to Chris Contreras for making this review possible, and you will see more of his beers reviewed over the next little while. But yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Dogfish Head as well, and I'm sure I'll return to this brewery and to Delaware at some point in the fairly near future. Thanks again for watching. Make sure you check out my social media, have a go at some of the Dogfish Head beers, and I will catch you guys very soon, hopefully with another Dogfish Head beer in the fairly near future too. Slàinte, skål, cheers, thanks for watching.